The readings this morning are both from the New Testament, Luke and Ephesians. So I'll be reading those and then follow up with the printed word also in the bulletin. And from Luke, this is on the walk to Emmaus. As they came near the village to which they were going, he walked ahead as if he were going on. But they urged him strongly, saying, "Stay with us, because it is almost evening and the day is now nearly over." So he went in to stay with them. When he was at the table with them, he took bread, blessed and broke it, and gave it to them. Then their eyes were opened and they recognized him, and he vanished from their sight. They said to each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he was talking to us on the road, while he was opening the scriptures to us?" That same hour they got up and returned to Jerusalem, and they found the 11 and their companions gathered together. They were saying, "The Lord has risen indeed, and he has appeared to Simon." Then they told what had happened on the road and how he had been made known to them in the breaking of the bread. And then from Ephesians, concerning unity in the body of Christ. "I, therefore, the prisoner in the Lord, beg you to lead a life worthy of the calling to which you have been called, with all humility and gentleness and patience, bearing one another in love, making every effort to maintain the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. There is one body and one Spirit, just as you were called to the one hope of your calling." And then in the bulletin, "The gathered body of Christ, like the disciples on the road to Emmaus, break bread together no matter what. We don't have to all be in agreement or have the same perspectives on everything in order to have a place at the table."
How do we sit at the table together when we disagree? It's probably not, wouldn't be hard to gather at the table if we disagree about how we make peanut butter sandwiches. And I love the children's responses. But there are other things that are going on in the world, in the United Methodist Church, the larger church, in our own church, and sometimes we disagree. I'm not here to advocate for a way to believe or not believe, or an opinion to have or not have. There is a lot going on right now, and what I want to advocate for and encourage us to do is to take a breath, take a deep breath, take a lot of deep breaths, and to take a step back and to love each other and to listen to one another. And to know that in the house of God, in Jesus' church, there are times when we're going to disagree. Can we still sit next to each other at the same table, at Christ's table, when those disagreements may be very powerful? Should we just ignore the things that we disagree about? And with that, it sounds kind of appealing, but you can't really do that. That's not realistic, is it? Let's all just agree on everything. Well, that's not realistic either. I know that doesn't work. Or maybe we could just disagree less. Well, if I could come up with that, the way to do that, I probably could write a book and be very popular. I don't know how to disagree less. I don't know how to ignore things that I disagree with someone else about. In fact, what I know is that disagreement can lead to some very creative thinking. When people disagree about things, some pretty creative ideas can come out of the disagreement. Jesus invites us to his table and to the tables that we share with our families, the communion table, the kitchen table. Jesus invites us to come to those tables acknowledging our brokenness, our differences, and acknowledging that we are all offered grace. And I know that acknowledging brokenness is not easy. I know that having differences of opinion about something is not easy. And I want to share a little bit about how I think we can try to be intentional about being on that journey. We all come to dealing with differences or dealing with disagreements, even arguing about things based on our earliest experiences growing up in our families. In my family, if you didn't agree with my dad, then you were going to hear about it, and Dad was pretty strong that it was his way or the highway. So my sister and I learned that you didn't disagree with Dad. And so it made me pretty uncomfortable with conflict, with anger. That was hard. That was hard for me. That's how I learned about differences of opinion and disagreement, that it wasn't very comfortable and it was a hard road to walk. But then I'd be visiting my friends' homes and I'd see how their families would share a different opinion or could disagree about something and share it openly and not be afraid or not be anxious or worried. Like, wow, that's different. I like that. Even if we think another person's opinion or belief about something is somehow misguided, whether it's which side you put the peanut butter and the jelly on or whatever it might be, we are called to respond to each other in ways that Christ taught us. We are to respond in love. In both the Gospel of Luke and the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus said, love your enemies and love the people you disagree with and love the people who persecute you. And I know that's not easy because our first inclination is to feel angry, feel hurt, feel defensive, want to protect ourselves. It's a tall order to be able to embrace and connect with people who may have a very strong opinion different from yours. But it's kind of like Jesus says, you don't really have a choice other than to be respectful and loving and compassionate and kind. That it's not okay to offer contempt and judgment and disdain and be sarcastic and treat people that way. God is at work in all that's going on right now in our church here at Base United Methodist Church, in the larger United Methodist Church. God is at work, and we have to trust that God is at work among us, even if there are some pretty painful, divisive things going on. We have to trust that God is at work. So I think that we can learn how to disagree better. I don't think we can learn to not disagree, and I don't think we can learn to disagree less, but I do think we can learn how to disagree better. And I think part of that is having we can call them holy conversations, or the circles of listening that we're going to have in the next couple of weeks that all of you are invited to, where you get to share in a safe and respectful environment. What are your questions? What are your thoughts? What are your feelings about what's been going on in the conference? What do you want to know? Let's come together and talk about it. Let's not pretend that it's not there. And I have some suggestions for how we disagree better. The first one, and I found this analogy that I really like. I wanted to share it with you. It says, when you disagree with someone, use your values as a gift, not as a weapon. Okay? How you use your values is very important when talking with someone with whom you disagree. They said, think about your values as a bouquet of flowers. If you bring to a stranger's door or to the door of someone you don't know very well, if you bring a bouquet of flowers, showing them how beautiful they are, the stranger will probably agree with you that they are lovely and accept them as a gift. But if when you bring that bouquet of flowers to that stranger or that person you don't know very well, and they open the door and you take that bouquet of flowers and you start beating them over the head with it, hope that never happens, but are they going to see any value in your gift of flowers? Are they going to be able to engage with you and connect with you? Are they going to welcome you and invite you in? No. The flowers are ruined. The stranger is probably going to slam the door in your face, and there's no opportunity for connection, for being together. The more we can share our values in ways that are loving and kind and considerate, even if they are totally in opposition to another person, the more we open the door for conversation and for connection and for relationship. And three other real quick things that I think also help us disagree better is when we're gathered around the table, when we're gathered in the listening circles that you're invited to, first of all, to commit to being curious, to staying curious. Not coming in saying, I know what's right, or I know that the other person is wrong, but instead, I'm going to come and be curious. I'm going to come with as much as possible an openness to learning and to staying at the table, even if I disagree with the person or persons I'm talking with. And when the going gets rough, I'm going to start wondering. I might ask, tell me more about that. Tell me how that's so important to you. And I'm going to try as much as humanly possible to stay engaged. And second, actually it's number 3, because the first one is don't use your bouquet of flowers to bash somebody over the head. Number 2, stay curious. Number 3, be kind. Be kind as much as possible. We are going to hear things in life, in this church, in the world we work in our families, that are going to challenge us, and we're going to disagree. We can still practice what Jesus taught us, which was to love one another and to pray for each other and to be respectful in our responses and how we engage each other, treating each other with grace and love. And then the last thing I think that helps us to disagree better is to truly listen to what the other person is saying. How often do we listen, and I do this with my husband, Rick, when he and I disagree about something, I'm already thinking, when he's talking, I'm already thinking in my mind how I'm going to refute what he's saying. And so then some of you are smiling, it's like, yeah, Pastor Kathy, we know what you're talking about. We do that too. To truly listen, to suspend our thoughts in the moment and truly listen to what the other person is saying. To listen, not to agree, but to listen to understand is such an experience of feeling heard and valued. And again, we may totally disagree. I may totally disagree with Rick about something that's very important. But we value each other by listening to each other. And one thing that we have practiced in our 17 years of marriage is we'll say to each other, is it more important to be right or to be in relationship? Is it more important to be right or be in relationship? And we want to be in relationship. So sometimes we have to let go of that being right. So listen and hear the other person as much as you hope that they will listen to you and hear you. All right, let's kind of pull all this together. We are this family of faith, at faith, because we know that God provides unbounded grace and calls us also to be graceful to each other. And we can choose to create safety for tender and sensitive conversations by remembering that each one of us is precious in God's sight. And each one of us is on a journey. And we may be at different places in that journey. But we can still accept each other and love each other. We don't have to agree with everything, but we can still accept and love each other. And we can work hard to provide a safe place where we're not judgmental, because judgment can be very, very hurtful. We gather around Christ's table, which we're going to do next Sunday, by the way. We're having communion next Sunday. We gather around the table acknowledging God's grace for all of us. And Jesus called that we love each other even among the differences that we have. We can gather around the table even in our differences, knowing that no matter what, Jesus has a place for every one of us at the table. So regardless of how you feel about the recent vote taken at General Conference, regardless of how you feel about same-gender marriage or ordination of same-gender persons, of gay and lesbian persons, that's not what we need to be debating and arguing about right now. What we need to be doing is loving each other and listening to each other and realizing that we are going to have different ways of looking at things. What's more important than being right is being in relationship. Trust that God is at work. God is at work in this congregation. Trust that. Give yourself to God. Amen.